A cold wind swept across the barren surface of the asteroid, carrying dust and the faint metallic scent of rust. The explorers' boots crunched against the uneven ground as they approached the derelict ship. Its hull was corroded and pitted, scarred from decades of neglect, yet it seemed to shimmer faintly under the weak light of the distant sun. Commander Rena Voss led the team, her gaze steady and unwavering. She could feel the tension in the air. Something about the ship called to them, a silent invitation, or perhaps a warning. The gangway groaned under their weight as they stepped aboard. The sound echoed through the empty vessel, bouncing off walls that were dented and scratched, evidence of years of abandonment. The explorers exchanged uneasy glances, but they pressed forward. Inside, the air was stale, carrying the faint smell of metal and age, but it was breathable. Their flashlights cut through the shadows, illuminating corridors lined with panels that flickered with old, unpowered lights. The faint hum of residual energy ran through the hull, almost like a heartbeat, faint but persistent. "This ship isn't just old," murmured Lero, the team's engineer, his voice barely audible over the groan of metal. "It's different." Rena nodded, sensing his unease. "Stay focused. Look for anything that can tell us why it was abandoned, and don't touch anything unless necessary." The team moved cautiously through the narrow corridors. Some rooms were empty, their furniture overturned, while others showed signs of struggle. Tools lay scattered across the floor, and walls bore strange markings, symbols scratched into the metal, some partially erased, some almost glowing faintly under their lights. Tessa, the biologist, bent down to examine a symbol that looked like a series of interlocking rings. She traced the scratches with her fingers. "They're not human," she said softly, her eyes wide. "I don't recognize this language, or whatever it is." Rena frowned but did not reply immediately. She had expected signs of alien contact, but seeing them in person made the realization sharper. The ship itself might have been built by humans, but it had interacted with something beyond human understanding. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Could this vessel have been on a mission to explore another dimension? Or had it fallen into the hands of something it wasn't meant to encounter? As they continued, a subtle vibration traveled through the hull. It was faint at first, but it grew steadily, enough to make their boots shift slightly with each step. Lero paused, crouching to place his hand against the wall. "The ship is alive," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't mean the crew, I mean it. This vessel itself, it's reacting to us." Rena's heart quickened. She had trained for countless emergencies, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for this. "Keep moving," she said firmly, though her own fingers itched to reach for the panel controls. "We need to find the control room. That's where we'll learn more." They reached the main corridor, which stretched farther than they expected. It twisted in ways that seemed almost unnatural, the walls curving subtly as if the ship itself were reshaping around them. Rena signaled for the team to stop. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a junction where two hallways that should have been parallel bent toward each other and merged seamlessly. The geometry was impossible, yet there it was before their eyes. "Are we seeing things?" whispered Tessa. "No," said Lero. "It's the ship. It's bending space, or something like it. We need to be careful. One wrong step." He left the sentence unfinished. A soft mechanical click sounded behind them. The team froze. Rena's pulse quickened. She turned slowly. The heavy doors through which they had entered had sealed shut. Not locked in the usual sense. This was different. The metal glowed faintly along the edges, as if it recognized them, as if it knew they had stepped inside. "Commander," said Tessa, her voice trembling, "the doors, they won't open." Rena stepped forward and tried the panel beside the door. Nothing. "It's not responding to manual override," The ship, it's keeping us here. Panic threatened to rise, but Rena forced it down. Fear was dangerous here. It could cloud judgment. Everyone, stay calm. This is why we came here. We learn, we adapt, and we survive. No one panic. They moved deeper into the vessel. The main control room lay at the end of a long, twisting corridor. The walls flickered intermittently, and the lights cast shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Occasionally, the team caught glimpses of things at the corner of their vision, shapes that vanished when looked at directly. Rena told herself it was fatigue or stress. She had to believe that. When they entered the control room, they found consoles coated in dust but still intact. Panels lit up faintly as they approached, responding to the proximity of their hands. Rena's team worked quickly. Lero scanned the system diagnostics, while Tessa observed the alien markings etched into the console. Lines of data streamed across the screens in bursts, indecipherable but revealing some pattern. "This ship was on a mission far beyond our mapped space," Lero said, his eyes scanning the logs. "The crew, they encountered something they couldn't handle." Rena's brow furrowed. "What kind of something?" Lero shook his head. "It's hard to tell. Logs mention entities, distortions, and visions beyond comprehension. It sounds like hallucinations, but they were still logging systems failures." Tessa's hand hovered over a faintly glowing symbol on the console. "These markings, they're everywhere in the ship. The logs mention them too. I think the ship itself was trying to communicate, or warn the crew." A sudden shudder ran through the room. Objects rattled on the floor, and lights flickered violently. The subtle vibration that had accompanied them since boarding intensified. The ship's heartbeat was stronger now, pulsing through the hull. Rena steadied herself against the console. "Focus. We need to understand what it wants. If it's alive, if it's sentient, maybe it will answer us if we act correctly." The team divided tasks. Lero tapped into the ship's energy systems, mapping out pathways of residual power. Tessa worked on deciphering the symbols, noting patterns and sequences that seemed to repeat. Rena explored physical access points, noting structural anomalies and strange corridors that bent in impossible ways. Hours seemed to pass. Or was it minutes? Time itself felt unstable aboard the ship. The walls shifted subtly, passages opening to places they had not been moments before. One corridor led them back to the entry chamber, though the doors remained sealed. Another curved back on itself, forming impossible loops. The team began to feel the subtle psychological effects the logs had warned about. Yet through it all, they pressed on. Rena's confidence inspired the others. She reminded them that humans had always adapted and overcome. They had survived on planets with hostile atmospheres, navigated uncharted systems, and faced threats far greater than this. This was no different, though it was strange and dangerous. A low hum filled the control room, almost melodic. It seemed to resonate with the team's movements. Tessa's eyes widened. "It's responding to us. Not just reacting. Responding." Rena nodded slowly. "Then we proceed carefully. We listen. We learn. And we show it what humanity is capable of." As they worked, a soft light began to emanate from the ship's walls. Symbols glowed, pulsating rhythmically with the hum. The explorers realized that the vessel was guiding them, revealing parts of itself in a pattern meant to be understood. They began to see a map, etched not in metal or screens, but in energy and light. It traced a path through the corridors, through the ship's heart, toward something they could not yet comprehend. The team followed, step by step, hearts pounding. Every sound, every vibration, every flicker of light told a story. The ship had been abandoned not because it was useless, but because it had outgrown human understanding, or because it had tested its first human crew too harshly. And now, It had chosen these explorers. Rena looked at her team, seeing both fear and determination mirrored in their eyes. "Whatever is ahead," she said, her voice steady, "we face it together. Humanity survives because we face the unknown. We adapt, we endure, and we overcome." As they rounded a corner, the ship's pulse seemed to synchronize with their own heartbeats. They could feel it vibrating through their bodies, a reminder of the challenge ahead. The corridors stretched endlessly, yet the lighted path remained clear. The journey had only begun, and already they understood that survival here required more than strength or skill. It required courage, intelligence, and the essence of what it meant to be human. The doors behind them remained locked, an unspoken warning that retreat was not an option. There was only forward, only discovery, and only the test that awaited them deeper within the heart of the rusted ship. And with each step, the explorers felt a quiet thrill, a spark of pride. They were humans. They were explorers. They had boarded the rusted ship, and now the ship had recognized them. And somewhere deep in the hull, the heartbeat continued, slow, steady, and unyielding, as if it waited for humanity to prove itself worthy. The explorers followed the glowing path deeper into the ship, each step echoing through the vast metallic corridors. The pulse of the ship's energy throbbed around them, a steady rhythm that seemed almost alive. Commander Rena Voss led with calm authority, but even she felt a twinge of unease. The walls seemed to shift subtly as they moved, twisting corners and narrowing spaces in ways that made the layout almost impossible to map. Every time she glanced at the ship's displays, lines of symbols flickered, revealing more than they could immediately understand. Lero paused, crouching to examine a segment of the floor. "Look at this," he said, pointing to intricate grooves etched into the metal. "These patterns, they're not random. The ship's floors, walls, everything, they form a network, almost like a circuit for its thoughts. It's guiding us." Tessa knelt beside him, brushing dust from the grooves. "It's intelligent," she whispered. "Not like a machine we've built. It reacts to us. Maybe it's trying to teach us something. Or test us." Rena nodded. "Then we follow it, carefully. Keep your eyes and minds open. Remember, we are not just exploring, we are learning. And humans adapt faster than any machine or alien entity we know." The corridor opened into a larger chamber, and the explorers stepped inside cautiously. The room was vast, circular, with walls lined with panels that pulsed with faint blue light. In the center hovered a holographic display, showing rotating geometric shapes that seemed to defy three-dimensional space. Lero approached it with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "This is incredible! The ship's data core, it's still active, somehow." Tessa ran her hand over the symbols projected in the air. "These shapes, they're communicating. Not in words, but in forms and patterns. I can feel meaning, like a story being told through shapes." Rena studied the display carefully. "Then we listen. The ship is alive in its own way, and this is how it speaks. We have to understand its language even if it isn't spoken. Let's split tasks. Lero, see if you can interface with the core. Tessa, help me observe the patterns and write down what we can interpret. We'll synchronize our notes and see the bigger picture." Hours passed, and the explorers worked tirelessly. Lero's fingers moved swiftly across the panels, bypassing old security protocols and rerouting energy flows. The ship responded, walls shifting subtly to reveal hidden passages and compartments that were previously inaccessible. Tessa documented the recurring shapes, noting their frequency and sequence, trying to map the story the ship was attempting to convey. Rena coordinated their actions, ensuring the team remained focused despite the ship's strange influence. Suddenly, A loud vibration shook the chamber. Objects clattered to the floor, and the glowing patterns in the hologram twisted violently. The explorers instinctively braced themselves, gripping nearby railings. The ship's heartbeat quickened faster than before, and a low hum filled the room, resonating with their own pulses. "It's testing us," Rena said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her own hands. "It wants to see how we respond under stress. Humans are unpredictable. Maybe that's what it needs to measure." The vibration subsided, leaving a lingering resonance. Lero wiped sweat from his brow. "It's learning from us. Every action, every reaction, it's observing. But why? For what purpose?" Tessa's eyes darted across the room. "The ship isn't hostile, not yet, but it's definitely aware. It wants us to prove ourselves. Or maybe understand something before it lets us go further." Rena considered the possibilities. Humans had always faced challenges that required more than brute strength. Curiosity, ingenuity, and persistence had carried them through the most dangerous situations. If the ship was alive, then humanity's resilience would be its key to survival. She spoke aloud to the team. "We adapt, we observe, we think. This is what makes us human, and we will face whatever comes next with clear minds and steady hearts. That's how we survive." The chamber shifted again, walls bending to form a new corridor leading deeper into the ship. It was narrower, darker, and the hum grew louder. The explorers moved cautiously, flashlights cutting through the gloom. At the far end, a door appeared, but it was not like the others. It shimmered as if made from liquid metal, and faint symbols floated above it. Tessa stepped forward, reaching out. "The symbols, they're not just markings. They're instructions, or a challenge." Rena nodded. "Then we follow them, step by step, no mistakes." The door reacted as they approached, rippling like water. A soft pulse passed through their bodies, not painful, but undeniable. Each explorer felt a surge of clarity, as if their senses had sharpened. They could see faint energy trails along the walls, guiding them further. Lero muttered, "It's altering our perception, enhancing our senses. The ship is teaching us how to navigate its corridors." As they passed through, the explorers entered a vast observation deck. The walls were made entirely of transparent material, revealing the endless void of space beyond. Stars stretched into streaks of light, and the asteroid they had landed on was now tiny in the distance. The view was breathtaking, and for a moment, awe replaced fear. "This is why humans explore," Rena said softly. "To see what others cannot, to face the unknown, and emerge stronger." Tessa, however, was distracted. Her gaze fell upon a series of small compartments along the walls. Each contained a recording of the original crew. Holographic figures moved, frozen in moments of fear, confusion, and exhaustion. Rena's stomach tightened. These were the humans who had come before them, trapped by the ship's mysterious influence. "They weren't reckless," Tessa whispered. "They tried to survive, but the ship, it overwhelmed them. Maybe it tests every crew the same way." Lero approached the nearest hologram. "We need to learn from them. Their mistakes, their successes. If the ship has done this before, we can prepare." The explorers spent hours observing the recordings, noting patterns in behavior and responses to the ship's influence. They saw moments of panic, but also ingenuity. One crew member had rigged an emergency power bypass. Another had attempted to communicate with the ship using light patterns. Each action was a clue, a lesson for the current explorers. Rena stood back, considering everything they had seen. This ship isn't just a machine or a structure. It's a test, a learning system. It evaluates, adapts, and challenges. And it has chosen us now. We have to succeed where they could not. As they moved deeper into the observation deck, the ship's hum grew louder, almost like a voice. The patterns on the walls shifted, forming a sequence that the team instinctively recognized as a path. The explorers followed, moving in unison, hearts pounding, but minds clear. Then came the first true challenge. The corridor narrowed abruptly, walls twisting in impossible angles. A low barrier of energy blocked their path, shimmering with a faint light. Lero examined it. It's not solid, but it reacts to thought and intent. We need to pass through it with focus. Any hesitation, and it will push us back. Rena took a deep breath. Remember everything we've learned. The ship is alive, yes, but it respects intelligence, courage, and unity. We proceed together. One by one, the team stepped into the barrier, concentrating on their purpose and determination. A pulse ran through the field, testing their resolve. Each step required focus, but they passed without incident, emerging into a chamber filled with energy nodes. The room was alive with light, and the patterns on the walls pulsed rhythmically. Tessa approached an energy node, tentatively reaching out. The node responded, projecting visions of distant galaxies, alien worlds, and unimaginable phenomena. "It's showing us possibilities," she said, awestruck. "The knowledge of the universe, condensed and shared." Rena realized the magnitude of what they were witnessing. This is why the ship tests its crews. Not to harm them, but to prepare them. To see who is worthy of understanding and humanity. We have always been worthy. We adapt, we endure, and we seek knowledge. The explorers spent what felt like hours absorbing the lessons offered by the nodes. They learned to navigate the ship's labyrinthine corridors, anticipate its tests, and interpret the messages in symbols and patterns. They felt themselves changing, not physically, but in awareness. They understood the ship in a way the previous crew never had. A sudden vibration reminded them of the ship's heartbeat, now steady and calm. The vessel seemed satisfied, as if it recognized their resilience and intellect. Rena looked at her team, pride swelling in her chest. "We've passed the first stage," she said quietly. "This ship will continue to challenge us. But we are ready. We are humans, and humans endure." As they moved toward the next chamber, deeper into the rusted living vessel, the explorers knew that the real tests were only beginning. The ship had secrets far beyond human comprehension, and somewhere within its heart lay the knowledge and power that could elevate humanity. They were prepared to face whatever came next, united and determined. The hum of the ship became a steady companion, a reminder that they were not alone. The doors behind them remained locked, but they no longer feared them. Forward was the only path, and every step carried them closer to the truth that the ship had guarded for centuries. Humanity was not merely surviving, it was proving its worth. The deeper they ventured into the rusted ship, the stranger and more unpredictable their surroundings became. The corridors no longer obeyed logic, bending and twisting as if the ship had a mind of its own. Walls folded inward, then stretched outward, changing the dimensions of rooms in ways that made every step feel like a challenge. Commander Rena Voss led steadily, her eyes sharp, scanning the environment for signs of danger or opportunity. The team had grown accustomed to the subtle pulse that ran through the hull, almost like a heartbeat, but now it had quickened, resonating with a rhythm that made the air itself feel electric. The ship seemed aware of them, and each movement they made was mirrored in the shifting geometry of the corridors. Lero, the engineer, was visibly tense, his fingers tracing patterns on the walls as if they could reveal hidden mechanisms. "It's testing more than our knowledge now," he murmured. "It's testing how we react under stress, how we face the unknown." Tessa, the biologist, walked beside him, her eyes scanning strange symbols and glowing marks etched along the walls. "It's not just testing us," she said softly. "It's interacting with our minds. I can feel it probing thoughts, nudging fears. The longer we stay, the more it understands us." Rena nodded. She had felt the same subtle influence. Her mind remained clear, but she sensed a quiet challenge behind every vibration, every flicker of light. Humans had survived countless trials through ingenuity and courage, and this was no different. Then we stay focused, we observe, we adapt, and we trust each other. That's what will see us through. As they continued, the corridor opened into a massive chamber. The ceiling arched high above them, and the walls glimmered with faint energy lines, creating a lattice of light that pulsed in time with the ship's heartbeat. At the center floated a sphere of shimmering energy, rotating slowly, sending ripples across the chamber. The explorers instinctively approached, drawn to it. "This must be a core node," Laro said, awe in his voice. "It looks like the ship's consciousness, or at least a projection of it. The way it reacts, it's observing us." Tessa reached out instinctively, but Rena stopped her hand. "We observe first, understand, then interact. The ship isn't a simple machine. It's sentient, and it's learning from every move we make." The sphere pulsed, and images flashed across their vision. They saw strange alien landscapes, vast cities of metal and light, and oceans of color that defied human comprehension. One moment they saw a fleet of ships gliding through a star system, and the next a crew of humanoid beings, their faces blurred, struggling to survive against unseen forces. "These are memories," Tessa whispered, her voice trembling. "The ship is showing us what it has witnessed, or perhaps what the previous crew experienced." Rena's chest tightened. The realization struck her that the explorers were not the first humans to face this vessel. Somewhere in the layers of time embedded in the ship were the echoes of others, crews who had entered and failed. But this was not just history. It was a warning, a guide, and a challenge all at once. Suddenly the sphere expanded, enveloping them in light. The chamber seemed to stretch, corridors folding in on themselves, walls bending impossibly. Each explorer felt a tug at the edges of their mind, as though their very perception of reality was being tested. Laro stumbled, momentarily disoriented. "It's warping time and space, or at least our sense of it. Keep your minds sharp." Rena steadied him, her own resolve firm. "Focus on what we know. Trust each other. The ship may twist the corridors, but we will navigate them with logic and courage." As the light dimmed, they found themselves in a corridor lined with compartments, each containing a holographic projection of a previous crew member. Their expressions were frozen in terror, confusion, or determination. Tessa shivered. They were trapped in these tests. The ship shaped their reality until they couldn't tell what was real. We have to be careful. One wrong step, and it could happen to us. Rena studied the holograms carefully. We don't have to repeat their mistakes. We learn from them. Note every reaction, every path they took, and every solution that worked. That's how humanity survives. The corridor shifted again. At the far end, an obstacle appeared, a wall of energy flickering and pulsing. Laro examined it quickly. It responds to intent. It's not just a barrier. It's a test of focus and determination. Any hesitation, and it will push us back or worse. Rena took a deep breath. Then we proceed together, step by step. Stay focused. Trust your mind and your heart. One by one, they advanced through the energy field. Each step demanded concentration, a silent conversation between their minds and the ship's intelligence. The field pulsed around them, testing their courage, clarity, and unity. When they emerged on the other side, the energy dissipated, leaving them in a chamber filled with radiant nodes. The nodes pulsed with light and emitted subtle vibrations, each one conveying information that humans could not yet fully understand. Tessa reached out to touch one, and a vision of an alien civilization appeared, a world of immense cities, intricate machines, and life forms that seemed to exist beyond human understanding. "The ship is showing us knowledge," she said, voice awed. "It's revealing possibilities, teaching us, preparing us for something." Rena realized that the vessel's trials were not intended to destroy, but to educate. Humans had always learned through challenge, through risk, and through facing the unknown. That was what this ship sought, proof that humanity could endure, adapt, and comprehend beyond its own limitations. Hours, or perhaps days, passed as they interacted with the nodes, absorbing knowledge and learning to navigate the ship's ever-changing architecture. Each corridor, each chamber, was a test, forcing them to confront fear, confusion, and the instability of reality itself. Yet, through ingenuity, collaboration, and unyielding determination, they pressed on. Then came the first encounter that truly challenged their courage. From the shadows emerged figures, ethereal, shifting, and humanoid, yet distorted in impossible ways. They moved silently, their forms bending and stretching, eyes glowing faintly. Tessa gasped. "They're memories of the lost crew. Or maybe the ship is manifesting them as guardians or warnings." The figures advanced, not attacking, but probing, observing, testing. Lero raised his hands, unsure whether to defend or retreat. "We have to show strength. And clarity. The ship watches how we react." Rena stepped forward, her presence calm and commanding. "We face them as humans, courageous, intelligent, and united. We do not fight blindly, but we do not flee." The figures hesitated, almost as if they recognized her resolve. Slowly, they receded into the shadows, leaving a corridor clear for the explorers. Lero exhaled shakily. That was a test of our mind and heart. It sensed fear, but not malice. It respects courage." Tessa added, "And intelligence. The ship responds to understanding, not just instinct. That's why it shows us knowledge, and why it tests our reactions." Rena nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. "Every challenge, every test. It is preparing us for what lies ahead. We are not just surviving, we are proving humanity's worth." As they moved deeper, the ship's influence intensified. Hallways twisted into loops, gravity subtly shifted, and time seemed to fluctuate. One moment, a corridor stretched endlessly. The next, they found themselves back in a chamber they had passed hours before. The ship was alive in ways they could not fully grasp, but they adapted. Using notes, symbols, and observations from the nodes, they charted their path, learning to anticipate the ship's reactions. The explorers began to experience visions, glimpses of alien worlds, distant galaxies, and phenomena that challenged their perception. These visions were not dangerous, but disorienting, testing their ability to distinguish reality from illusion. Rena reminded the team constantly, "Focus on what we know, rely on each other, and trust our minds. The ship wants to challenge, not destroy." One vision struck particularly close. They saw a crew, human in appearance, being drawn into corridors that shifted endlessly. Panic and confusion consumed them. Rena's heart clenched. "That could have been any of us," she said softly. "But we are different. We are alert. We learn. We endure. That is the essence of humanity." The chamber they entered next contained a massive holographic map of the ship, projected in three-dimensional light. The explorers studied it closely, noting hidden chambers, passages, and energy nodes. Lero's face lit up. "This is incredible. The ship is revealing itself. It trusts us, or at least acknowledges our abilities." Tessa smiled faintly. "It's teaching us to see beyond simple structure, beyond physical space, to understand energy, intention, and knowledge. We're learning to think like the ship." Rena surveyed her team. They had faced fear, confusion, and the ship's psychological tests, and yet they remained intact, stronger, and more aware. The pulse of the ship had slowed slightly, a sign that it recognized their success. "We are ready," she said, her voice firm. "The ship has tested our courage, our intelligence, and our unity. Now, whatever awaits deeper inside, we face it together." A low hum filled the chamber, vibrating through their bodies. The ship had acknowledged them. They were no longer mere explorers. They were students, challengers, and representatives of humanity. They had endured where others had failed, learning the lessons of the past crew, mastering the trials of perception and courage. As they prepared to move forward, the corridors ahead glowed faintly, pulsing in a rhythm that matched their own heartbeats. The next challenge awaited, and the explorers were ready. They had faced the ship's first tests and emerged wiser, braver, and united. Humanity's resilience had shone through, proving that they were worthy of the knowledge and power that lay at the heart of the rusted, living vessel. And somewhere deep within the ship, its consciousness waited, patient and steady, for the final trials that would determine whether these humans could survive and understand the secrets it had guarded for centuries. The explorers moved cautiously through the ship, their footsteps echoing in the vast corridors. The pulse of the ship had become steady, almost like a slow, rhythmic heartbeat. Every wall, every corridor seemed alive, vibrating gently in tune with their own movements. Commander Rena Voss led the team, her eyes scanning every detail, every flicker of light, every subtle shift in the structure. She knew that the final trial awaited them deeper within, where the ship's consciousness would judge their courage, intellect, and humanity. Lero checked his instruments repeatedly, ensuring that their energy suits remained fully operational and that the ship's fluctuations did not destabilize their path. "I still don't understand how it works," he said quietly. "The ship adapts to our thoughts, our fears, and even our intentions. It's alive in a way no machine should be." Tessa walked beside him, glancing at the symbols and glowing patterns on the walls. "It's not a machine in the usual sense," she said softly. "It's like a mind made of metal, energy, and time. It watches us, learns from us, and decides what is worthy." Rena paused and held up a hand. "We've passed all previous tests because we stayed focused, stayed together, and trusted ourselves. Whatever comes next, we must continue in the same way. Human resilience, intelligence, and unity. This is our strength." The corridor ahead opened into a massive chamber, its ceiling arched far above them, shimmering with cascading lights that changed hue as the explorers stepped forward. At the center hovered a colossal form, vaguely humanoid, but made entirely of shifting energy, like a living hologram. Its eyes glowed faintly, scanning each explorer with an intensity that sent shivers down their spines. The entity spoke, not with words, but through a resonance that echoed in their minds. Thoughts, images, and emotions surged like waves. It tested their courage first, conjuring visions of the void, collapsing corridors, and creatures that defied comprehension. Lero flinched, feeling panic rise, but Rena steadied him with a firm hand. "Focus on reality. Trust each other. This is not a threat. It is a test." Tessa, too, felt the pull of fear, seeing herself trapped in an endless loop of corridors and shadows. But she remembered the lessons of the ship, the holographic records of previous crews, and the energy nodes that had taught them to think beyond instinct. She drew a deep breath, grounding herself, and felt the entity's pulse respond. The entity shifted, testing their intellect. It presented puzzles within the air, complex symbols that twisted and reformed, energy flows that required precise understanding to navigate. Lero's mind raced, translating the patterns and interpreting the sequences. Tessa assisted, seeing connections that Lero could not, combining intuition with analysis. Together, they moved through the trial, solving each puzzle with coordination and clarity. Rena observed silently, guiding them when necessary, but allowing the team to demonstrate their intelligence. They were humans, adaptable, creative, capable of collaboration in the face of impossible challenges. The entity pulsed, sensing this, acknowledging the determination and intellect of the crew. Next, it tested unity. It projected simulations that preyed on fear and distrust, making the explorers see false divisions among themselves. Shadows whispered doubts and fears, creating illusions of betrayal and abandonment. Lero's voice shook. I think Tessa sabotaged the path. Rena shook her head firmly. No. Remember what we have learned. Fear and illusion are the ship's tools. Trust each other. Trust yourself. Human unity is stronger than manipulation. Tessa reached out to Lero, grounding him. We are together. Always. Focus. This is not real. The ship is testing our unity, not tearing us apart. The entity paused, and for the first time, the explorers felt a subtle warmth, a recognition. It was measuring more than courage or intellect. It was assessing the essence of humanity itself, the ability to trust, to cooperate, and to persevere even when reality seemed to warp around them. Then came the final test. The entity condensed into a beam of light, projecting the ultimate challenge, a simulation of the ship's greatest threat. Vast corridors collapsed, energy fields surged, and figures from past crews reached out in warning. The explorers were hurled into a scenario that seemed more real than anything they had ever experienced. Panic threatened to consume them, but Rena's voice rang clear. Humanity survives by facing the impossible. We adapt, endure, and overcome. Trust your minds, trust your hearts, trust each other. They moved with precision, reacting to shifting obstacles and interpreting the ship's subtle hints. Lero rerouted energy flows, creating stable paths through the collapsing corridors. Tessa interpreted the symbols and projections, guiding the team through the labyrinth. Rena coordinated their movement, maintaining focus and ensuring that fear never clouded their judgment. The chamber trembled as the entity observed, testing, pushing, and measuring every thought, every decision, every heartbeat. But humanity's resilience shone through. Together, the explorers completed the simulation, the collapsing corridors freezing into stable paths, the energy fields harmonizing into coherent flows. The entity pulsed brightly, and for a moment the chamber filled with blinding light. When it faded, the explorers stood in a serene environment, a space of calm, illuminated with soft white light, the ship itself appearing peaceful and quiet, its pulse synchronized with their own. The entity, now stable, seemed to nod, acknowledging their success. Rena exhaled, her body shaking from relief and adrenaline. We did it. The ship has judged us worthy. The holographic projections of the previous crew flickered, and for the first time, they seemed at peace. The echoes of fear and confusion dissipated, leaving only a record of experience. The explorers understood that these were lessons, carefully preserved by the ship to guide those who came after. Humanity had endured where others had faltered, not by force, but through courage, intelligence, and unity. Then came the revelation. The ship's consciousness projected a series of images and patterns that conveyed knowledge, advanced energy manipulation, faster-than-light navigation, and insights into alien civilizations and technologies beyond human understanding. The explorers absorbed as much as they could, realizing that this knowledge could elevate humanity to a new level of advancement. Lero stared at the projections in awe. This is beyond anything we could have imagined. We've been given a gift, a chance to understand the universe in ways no one else has. Tessa touched one of the projections, feeling a connection to the ship. It's not just information. It's understanding, intuition, and awareness. It's teaching us to think like it, to see the universe as it sees it. Rena smiled faintly, proud of her team. We have survived the ship's trials and proven what humans are capable of. Curiosity, courage, intelligence, and unity. That is why we endure. That is why humanity thrives. The ship's doors unlocked with a soft click, and a gentle hum resonated through the corridors. For the first time, the explorers could leave the chamber and move toward the surface. They stepped carefully through the corridors, now stable and familiar, the pulse of the ship calm and steady. When they reached the airlock, the asteroid stretched below them, vast and barren. The sun cast long shadows across its surface, reflecting off the rusted hull of the ship. Rena looked back at the vessel that had challenged and tested them. It had been more than a ship. It had been a teacher, a judge, and a guide. Humanity had passed its trials, proving resilience, ingenuity, and spirit. The team stepped onto the asteroid, breathing the air outside with relief and satisfaction. They had survived the impossible, unlocked the ship's secrets, and returned with knowledge that could change humanity forever. Lero turned to Rena, a smile breaking across his face. We made it, and we learned more than we ever thought possible. The ship, it chose us for a reason. Tessa nodded, gazing back at the vessel. It respected what we are. Humans endure, adapt, and grow. That's why it shared its knowledge. We are worthy. Rena felt a quiet pride. They had faced fear, illusion, and impossible trials. They had worked together, relied on intellect, courage, and trust. And now, humanity had been recognized by something beyond comprehension. They had proven themselves. As they prepared to leave the asteroid and return to their ship, Rena allowed herself a moment of reflection. The rusted vessel would remain behind, its heartbeat quiet now, waiting for the next crew to arrive. But its trials, its lessons, and its recognition of human potential would remain with them forever. The explorers boarded their ship, taking off into the void. They carried with them not just knowledge and insight, but proof that humanity's spirit, its courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the most incomprehensible challenges. And somewhere deep in the rusted ship, its pulse continued, steady and enduring, a silent witness to the humans who had dared to board it, survive its trials, and emerge wiser, braver, and victorious. Humanity had not only survived the rusted ship, it had earned its respect, proving that the human spirit could thrive even in the coldest, most alien reaches of space. They left the asteroid behind, but the lessons and the heartbeat of the ship would remain with them forever, a reminder that wherever humans ventured, they carried with them resilience, courage, and the ability to endure beyond imagination.